the National Republican Party is really crappy nowadays, now isn't it? I mean, there's just so many rhinos in the party, and, there's just so many problems. Mitt Romney's a person who still exists, and though he was censured by the party, which I quite enjoy, he's still in it, so, we have a lot of problems over there. But I wanted to shift the focus a bit for today. Since I have spent a bit of time recently tackling specifically the left, I wanted to talk a bit about the right. And actually, specifically, the UK right, and the fact that it doesn't exist. Because you see, over here in the US, in the States, things are bad. There's a lot of rhinos, okay? There's a lot of people in the Republican Party who are not Republicans and are just leftists. Asa Hutchins, Mitt Romney, as previously mentioned, and all those sorts of people exists over in the US, but it utterly pales in comparison to the right in massive air quotes, as it is over in the UK. Because over in the UK, there is hardly a right-wing paper to go around, much less an elected representative. Because even though the Conservatives have been absolutely killing it in elections, have been going off the wall recently, completely destroying the Labour Party, which is a very entertaining thing to see, they have done almost nothing to avail the UK of its utterly authoritarian laws like Section 127 or even the lockdowns. In fact, when it comes to the lockdowns, by and large, the right over in the UK, the Conservatives, have been the one pushing it and passing the laws so that there is a lockdown in the UK. Boris Johnson and his cabinet is the reason that it exists. As opposed to over here where, though the Republicans went along with it in certain instances, for the most part, they certainly weren't the ones proposing it, and in a large respect have been the ones repealing it and getting rid of it. And that displays an important distinction between the Conservatives over in UK town and the Conservatives over the US. Because the Conservatives in the UK are literally worthless. Yes, they have their wonderful manifestos. The Conservative Manifesto before the 2019 election was actually a pretty good manifesto. I quite liked it. But they ended up doing almost nothing with the massive gains that they got in the parliament. They have a huge majority right now, and on top of what they just did a few days ago, or about a week ago actually, with regard to the election that was happening. I think it's like their equivalent of a midterm, essentially. There was a lot of local elections going on. They've done almost nothing with it. They've done literally nothing with it. And I think a lot of the reason for this is the media over in the UK, because the media over in the UK, to put it lightly, is left-leaning. Which is to say there are more communist newspapers in the UK than there are legitimately right-wing ones. Which, yes, includes places like the Daily Mail, which, while they are more right-wing than somewhere like The Sun, the BBC, The Guardian, or Navarro Media, they are not even remotely close to what anyone over in the US would consider right-wing. I would consider their political position to be something like a CNN. So, something like maybe, I don't know, an AP. They're still kind of left-leaning in a lot of cases. They're just more willing to actually publish certain stories, which is why I ended up using them quite a bit. But that doesn't belie the point that there is almost no right-wing media in the UK, because conservatives, it's a bad term, and I talked about this slightly, on Monday, but I want to get into it a bit more here, because I'm not going to refer to myself as a conservative from now on. I don't feel it is a useful term to use in a lot of cases, and the reason I don't think it is a very useful term is because when it comes to being a conservative, it doesn't actually mean a whole lot, because the Conservative Party in the UK is ostensibly conservative. Asa Hutchins is ostensibly conservative, but if you look at their actual practices, such as the fact that in the UK, they spent and dragged their feet, the Conservatives did, on banning diversity training for months. And even when they did do it, they were still going through anti-racism training the entire way through. And I think they're still doing it up to this point. It is utterly absurd to consider the conservatives in the UK conservatives. Of course, that is assuming that conservative has a meaning to begin with, which I would argue at this point it doesn't, and it probably never did to begin with. For the most part, the people who get called conservative are just people the left doesn't like. It's not an actual position. It's not something where you can actually point to, okay, this is what they believe. It turns out that when you are called a conservative, all it means is that you are not a communist. That's pretty much all it means at this point, which is why I wanted to use a more specific and more reasonable term, at least to refer to myself. And that term I have determined, at this point at least, to be a constitutionalist. I don't want to call myself a libertarian because I don't want to be associated with the Libertarian Party, which is a train wreck, though I do share a lot of libertarian values, at least small L libertarian values. But I've figured out over the past few days and weeks that my fundamental belief and my fundamental want when it comes to the governance of a country, of course this not including things like what I want society to look like, society outside the government to look like, the community and whatnot, but just the government, talking just politically, which is what I really am interested in. I want a government that has strict restrictions on its own processes, where it has a written down set of things it can do, things it can't do, and if it doesn't fall under this system, which is set out in this Constitution, then you can't do it. That's what I want. I want a government that is set up with rules, where everything can be very cleanly and plainly understood, which is why I like the American Constitution, because it does that fairly well. Of course, it's not perfect, and my constitutionalism is, of course, not obsessed purely with the American Constitution. There are improvements to be made, but simply the idea of constitutions as a perfectly wonderful way to do governance. That is what I'm interested in, and that's what I've kind of discovered over the past few weeks, and as I've been thinking on this particular question of what is a conservative, and is even conservative a good term to begin with. And that's what I'm going to end up calling myself for the most part, constitutionalist. I feel as though it is the most accurate term we can use, especially since being a conservative is frankly kind of embarrassing when it includes people like Asa Hunchins, who thinks that conservative values equates to completely ignoring reality and pretending that trans women are women and that sort of thing. That's not a conservative value, or I guess actually it is, because Asa Hunchins is still someone who I imagine the left doesn't like, and if conservative just means people the left don't like, which is, that seems to be what it is. It's the reason why someone like Richard Spencer, who has the exact same economic opinions as someone like Sean Head, is called a conservative sometimes. It's utterly absurd, of course, but that is the case. And that's what happens when you let the left determine your own language. I don't want them to do that. That's why I'm choosing to call myself a constitutionalist. And I think that's where I'm going to leave you guys off today. If you enjoyed that video, do in fact subscribe down below. And if you want to check me out anywhere else, if you have another platform that you like, a video sharing platform, you can see where I am down in the description with very many pretty links down there. As well, you can also share this video wherever you see fit. And places where I like to share stuff would be places like Minds, Gab, and Parler, where I'll put out my videos on occasion. And if you want to check out a community for this sort of stuff, Breaking on the Daily community, then go to breakingonthedaily.locals.com. And I quite like the Locals platform, or the platforms, I guess. It is quite the good place. Now, that's where we're going to be done. I'm KelKidman, this has been Breaking on the Daily, and I'm out.